So hi everyone, as promised, we're going to take a look at the new keyboard in action. This is an old Rogers keyboard that I rescued off of an instrument that was being disposed of, and it has been wired into a DTS MIDI systems encoder that's designed specifically for connecting old organ stuff to the software program called Hauptwerk, which is a pipe organ emulator that uses samples. I've also got a piston rail here, and we talked a little bit about that and how this is a custom layout to match the piston rail that I like to use inside Hauptwerk. So this setup for doing my original music, the thing that goes on here is that I'm not using pipe organ sounds in really the conventional sense. I'm doing a lot of augmentation through additional effects devices, which is this rack to my right. So if I just play the raw sound, that's not all that exciting, is it? So if we add the augmentation effect, then what happens there is we get a rhythmic effect. And I like to use my multi-track looper, which is another effects device, and loop those rhythm effects and then layer other things on top. But because I'm using a pipe organ emulator that's designed to work like a pipe organ, it's designed to function from an organ style keyboard. It has all of the control surfaces that we would normally have inside of a conventional organ console. Controlling it from a MIDI controller keyboard can be a little awkward. So this bigger keyboard that's now the upper keyboard, on my earlier version of this setup, it was the main keyboard. Now it can send all kinds of MIDI signals, and I can tell Hauptwerk to respond to those MIDI signals. But one of the really key quirks to this was that I would have, anytime there was any kind of a change, a piston change, a single stop changing, the effects processor settings, the layout of the keyboard split, which division of the organ the keyboard was playing, I had to consume a program on this keyboard. Now, and so the program has, 4 layers, and each layer has MIDI channel, key range, controller changes, program changes, etc., etc. And all of that goes out as a big data dump, basically. And to try and control an organ emulator that way was really kind of cumbersome. To play a show with just 5 of my pieces on it, I had consumed 85 programs on here, because every time there was a change, it consumed a brand new program on the main controller. So back when MIDI was first thought of, they were thinking synthesizers, and you'd have a MIDI keyboard, and you might be playing your piano sound module, and then you might be playing your synthesizer sound module, and then you might be playing orchestral voices, and you were going to switch between those, and you might layer like 1 or 2, maybe 3. Organs just don't work that way. And so to control an organ emulator from MIDI, well, we have to make some adaptations. And as I worked with different iterations of this setup using conventional MIDI keyboards, I just realized that, look, Hauptwerk wants to be an organ. I need at least one keyboard that works like an organ. So the basic thing was to have an organ keyboard and then have thumb pistons for changing the sound combinations that I was using. On an organ, you don't play like one sound at a time. You play combinations of sounds. So even this right here, that's two sounds put together. That's also two sounds. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sounds put together. So the layering that you do on an organ compared to the layering you might do with a digital keyboard setup, either with synthesizers or sound modules, is quite a different thing. The other quirky issue I had was that every time we changed programs on the main keyboard here, it would send an all notes off signal to everything on the system, and that would cause a gap if I was trying to like hang on to a sound and then change. Well, what would happen is I'd be over here, and then if I wanted those notes to continue through and just go to the next piston, it would cut them off, and then I'd have to re-strike the keys. Kind of unmusical. But as you can see, I can do that all I want, because now we're controlling the way Hauptwerk likes to hear it. For this keyboard to send that all notes off signal every time is necessity for what it's designed to be used for, but it's a hindrance for what I'm using it for. So at any rate, we've got keys, we've got pistons, we've got our pipe organ emulator. I'm going to get the camera over here, and we're going to take a look up close at the Hauptwerk screen, and I think I can show you better how this all goes together and why. Okay, so obviously if I had this set up as a screen share kind of thing, that would be better, but I don't have that on this computer. This computer is dedicated just for doing this stuff. So at any rate, let's take a look first at the console graphic. This is a graphic representation of the original console for this organ. Hauptwerk sample sets are usually made from specific organs, and they go through and they sample every pipe in the organ, and then they're able to build a organ emulation off of that. So the new keyboard is controlling what is the main keyboard on most organs, the second one up. If it's got 3 or more keyboards, then the second one up is usually the main keyboard. And so you can see right around here, if you can see my, right in that area, I'm hoping that comes through nicely. You can see that this keyboard, the new keyboard, is controlling the main keyboard. My MIDI controller, my Studio Logic keyboard, is controlling the bottom keyboard, and using the keyboard split function, also this keyboard. We now have a fourth keyboard, and that controls other things that I'll show you in a minute. And those, however, can be coupled to the other keyboard. So we see all these names, and then we see a bunch of these little boxes underneath here. I maybe should use my finger since that'll show up better. So we've got pedal, swell, echo, solo, great, choir, and what in the world does that mean? So the pedal is the bass pedals. So if we grab a couple of stops here, and I use my foot pedals, then I get those sounds on the foot pedals. So the swell, which is the lower part of the upper keyboard, the Studio Logic keyboard. And then we have clear over here the great. Get in here and grab something. And that's now my main keyboard, my bottom keyboard on this setup. let's take the effects out just for now. And boom. The upper part of my Studio Logic keyboard is controlling the choir division. That's the bottom keyboard actually on the organ. Then I can hit cancel and shut those off. That leaves us with the echo and the solo. So how do we get those into the mix? These two divisions and their corresponding stops can be coupled to one of the three keyboards I have represented on my setup. So let's say I want something off of the echo, and we're going to do like something like that. Echo to solo, echo to swell, echo to great, echo to choir. So I can put echo to great, and now it's on that main keyboard. I can do similar things. I can take the solo division, which is usually giving us some kind of, big fat sound, and let's say I want that on my choir keyboard. So we find solo to choir. That's a coupler. And that's what these, all across the top here, these are the great to pedal. That means that all the sounds that are normally on the great will now play on the pedal. And so through having a main keyboard controlling the great, and another secondary keyboard controlling the choir, the swell, and a little pedal board to control the pedals, I can kind of, through the coupler rail, put anything anywhere on the system, and I don't have to constantly change how the keyboards are set up. I only have to change that when there's something special I'm doing, some odd combination, and I need it to be a certain way. So the typical thing is that the lower part of the Studio Logic keyboard is the swell, the upper part is the choir, the main keyboard, the custom keyboard is my great division, the pedals are the pedals. And then through the coupler rail, I can get this over here and that over there and make that all work. Now, one of the key elements to really make my live rig function more like an actual organ from the new keyboard is the piston rail, all those little buttons that sit in underneath the keyboard. Now, right up here is a graphic for what's called the stepper. I'll do that. And basically what we have are, at any given time, we have 10 pistons marked 0 through 9. So let's just pull up the first one. Now you can see a group of stops came up. That gives me, and where else is the other thing? So here's the choir. The solo is down here on the grade. The echo is over on actually the swell. And then if I hit the next piston, then I get a completely different combination with stuff now in different locations. And this is more for a full organ sound. So we've got all of this is coupled to the great, and coupled to the choir as well. Now, to make all of that work, the stepper system has to be configured to the piston rail that I set up. In Hauptwerk, this is done with just note values. So the great keyboard is MIDI channel 2, and it has 61 notes. And so there's actually 128 notes on the MIDI system. So there's 35 on the bottom and a bunch more on the top, above and below the range that I'm going to be using for the keyboard. And that DTS board taps into those so I can put thumb pistons there. And Hauptwerk has a really nifty function. For configuring things, I can go over here and let's say I want to tell it which keyboard is going to be the great. I can tell it to auto detect. This prompt comes up, I hit the bottom key, the top key, say I'm done, and now that keyboard is assigned to that location. And you can see, hopefully see on the graphic that the keys actually move on the graphic. So on the stepper we have our next and previous buttons. We have our return to 0 button. Then we have 4 buttons here that are minus 100, minus 10, plus 10, plus 100. And then we have our 10 presets running from 0 to 9. The piston rail matches that. So that gives me access to 1,000 presets of stop combinations that I can put together, and I can easily access them. So what I've done on this is the first song in my setup is The Inescapable Past, and all of those presets are starting at 000, and that's on this little green screen here. And again, I wish you could see it better. If I go to my next song, which in this setup is Obsessive Love, now I need the screen to read 010, and I can do that simply by going up by 10. I hit the appropriate piston for that. Now it reads 010. Well, that means that now I'm on 10 through 20. And my piston rail now has a different set of combinations that I've put together for that song. So by by working the numbers basically, I can have each song has its own set of 10. It could have more if I need that. And that's easily kept track of by the first song is just 000, then 010, and then the next song is 020 and 030. I can also go up by 100 if I have to jump around. So let's say I want to go to 120 as a starting point, or 230 is what I got there as a starting point. Now I've got a group of 10, so that's 220, 221, 31, 32, 33, 34, 235, 236, and so forth. And then if I need to get back to the bottom of the list, I just hit my 000 button, and we're back to that very first preset. The way you set these up is you just go through here either with the mouse or touching on the screen. You get the combination you want, and then there's a set button, and that's going to flash right here. You hold that down, press the piston you want that group of stops to be set to, and then you're off and running. So what we have here to set that up with, again, auto detect for, in this case, for this organ only. Where is that? Auto detect for this organ only. And again, we get a prompt. I hit the piston I'm wanting to assign, and then tell it done, and we're done. And so Hauptwerk makes that part pretty easy. And when you do more complicated setups, you can go into other screens and set that up that way. So the bottom line here is that I'm now using my organ keyboard with organ controls to control the organ sounds. My MIDI, my conventional MIDI controller, my SL88, is being used as a secondary keyboard to this organ setup, but now it only controls other peripheral things like the effects processors. I don't have to use any of the MIDI functions on the SL88 to run Hauptwerk other than just to play some notes when I need the second and third keyboard to be operable. So there you basically have it in a nutshell. Because I was trying to control an organ emulator on my music rig here, conventional MIDI keyboards were not quite right, but I was able to build my own MIDI keyboard that was more in alignment with the organ emulator, and now I have a setup that's much more comfortable to play, much more agile, and actually more reliable than what I've had in the past. So next time we're going to take a look at the other control panel I'm building. This is also to do with MIDI, but in a very different way. I have my looper, I have effects devices, and I have other organ style controllers that again I'm using in a different way to help me change and keep track of things as I'm going along here. And we'll take a look at that setup and how that's coming along on the next video. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.